Hello again.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Good. How are you? Hi.
Chris.
How are you?
Good to see you. How are you?
Hi, I'm Gordon Kristen Myler.
Kristen, how are you? Very nice to meet you.
Ed Brazil.
Well, welcome, Mayor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Governor. Thanks for coming. It's
We're happy
great
to be
cause.
in town. It is. Tell me about how things are in Manasquan.
things are pretty good in Manasquan, actually. We had a great summer. If you're talking about opioid abuse, though, I think it's a problem that affects every town in the area.
Yep.
We might deny it a little bit, and people might be afraid to admit it, but I know a couple of people personally. I had two friends of mine who lost sons in their early 20s from heroin overdoses after having been through treatment programs. And, I think you're doing the right thing.
We're trying. I want to thank you all for coming. I know that this isn't an issue for you. This is your life. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that during this week, I got out to see all the different constituencies that are affected by this. I want to thank the mayor for dedicating space in his rec center for these efforts. This is really important. And like you said, the biggest problem we have, I think, in one respect is denial and shame and stigma, which doesn't allow us to talk about these things and to get them out in the open. And to make people who are suffering from the disease feel okay about asking for help and about being honest. And so much of what we're trying to do is not only provide the help and broader, more available help, but also it doesn't do anything if they don't ask for the help, if they don't come forward, and families don't come forward. And so I came here today just to let you know that that's what we're attempting to do, and to hear from all of you, because all of you are the ones who are. I want to thank Michelle for helping us set this up. I've been at City of Angels, and we want to hear from all of you. I mean, I'm not here to give a speech today. I'm here to hear from you. So, who wants to say anything to me about what we're doing, or anything else that's on your mind about the issue? I'm happy to listen.
Well, I will. My name's Ed Brazil.
Ed?
I commend you for what you've done so far. I mean, by far, being connected, with our nonprofit, we deal with companies in states across the country, and by far we've stepped out in here in New Jersey much more than a lot of the other states have. And we started it much earlier. I mean, even some of the programs are actually been modeled in other states, from some of the stuff that you've done, since you started it. But, we, as somebody that works in the industry, I don't even see an end coming to it. I mean, I see it even becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Yep. And, we do have to address some of the things that you spoke about the other day, 2 days ago, yep, during your announcement of the $100 million. It's important because it's a fight that, especially Michelle and I fight every day, and it's hard. It really is.
Well, listen, it is getting worse. And we know that. Just the statistics alone tell us that 2015, we lost 52,000 people to drug overdose in the United States. 2016, we lost 64,000. And what I continue to tell people is just based on the 15 statistics, that means we have a loss of life equal to September 11th every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks. That's 17 9/11s in a year. I mean, it's for those of us who were in this area and in 2001, the prospect of having to go through that 17 times is unthinkable, yet that's what we're doing. And with fentanyl becoming, and carfentanil becoming more and more prominent, and it's much more deadly than heroin or other opioids, we have a lot of work to do to stay even, let alone to begin to have that number come down. But this year with the money we've added now, we'll now be spending nearly $500 million just of state money inside the state on all of these programs to try to get more and more people involved in treatment and recovery, and to try to educate folks beforehand in the medical community and others who are causing a lot of this problem and contributing to it mightily. Who else would like to say anything about the issue?
Well, I would like to say something. We're here as the grassroots organization that's here for the people in our community. This is going to be a recovery center, and this is where it begins. It begins with grassroots help, and that's what we're doing here. And I think every community needs to start with something like that. We're really pushing to make this the place where people can come at the shore, get the help they need, go out and, you know, we're here for the people. And if we don't have that in every community, then we're not doing anything. Every community needs to have a place where they can go and get help.
Really important, and I'll tell you that, you know, that's why we've now expanded the recovery coach program to every county in the state. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, we hear all too often that folks come in being reversed by Narcan into an emergency room, and after they're brought back to consciousness and have a little while to gather themselves, the only question that they're asked is, did you consider killing yourself? Have you had suicidal ideations? If they say no, they're released. And these are folks who are active addicts. We just send them back out, and we wonder why a week or two, or in some instances a day or two later, they're back, getting reversed again. And so the Recovery Coach program has been a pilot program in a number of counties, and we're now putting another $21 million to put it in every hospital in every county in the state. And what that will mean is, if someone comes in with an opioid addiction, an overdose, and when they come to from Narcan, after them being stabilized medically, the next person who will see them will be a recovery coach who is almost always a recovering addict themselves. So they can speak to this person from a place of knowledge and experience. And they help to get them to detox. They help to get them to an outpatient recovery or an inpatient recovery program, and then they help to follow them from there on in, almost like a sponsor would be for them. And what we're finding in the counties where we have this program going already is we're seeing a decrease in the number of relapses of overdoses. So that when a person before was coming in 6 or 7 or 8 times being reversed in Narcan, that person, once they get with a recovery coach, are not coming back in. So we're seeing some real hope, and I think that's part of what we're trying to set up. It's government sponsored, but it's grassroots because it's in every hospital in the state. So no matter where you go, whether you're in rural Sussex County or here at the shore, or whether you're in Cumberland County, if you overdose, you're reversed by Narcan, and you go to a hospital, you're going to be greeted by a recovery coach who's going to be able to help, one, try to get you real about your problem, because they speak from experience, and two, then show you the direction that you need to go in to be able to try to get you treatment and get you help. So hopefully, you know, that will help a great deal.
Can I say something, Governor, too? So, you know, that is grassroots, but there are a lot more people, too, that come in that haven't been saved by Narcan but have just overdosed. So I think...
And that applied to them, too, by the way.
Yeah, it needs to
Anyone
be
who's
applied
overdosed.
to them, but I think the challenge, and I am a recovery coach by City of Angels, so the problem that we find when you go to these hospitals, you know, a lot of, they don't have insurance. I mean, 99% do not have insurance or any type of Medicaid, so to find them a place to go is very hard. A detox, I mean, we're in South Jersey, so I know the silent epidemic, we send a lot of people up to Bergen because it's really the only detox, but then there's no step after that from Bergen. So you're in Bergen 5 days, and then there's no follow-up with Bergen, and maybe that's not their, you know, their role, but there's no place for them to go after because there's not a lot of state-funded, you know, programs. So I'm just going to speak from experience. My daughter, who will have 4 years clean in October, when she was ready, thank God that she did get state funding, you know, to go to John Brooks in Atlantic City, which is, you know, in our part of the state. And then there were after steps after that. So thank God that happened. But, you know, as a recovery coach, that is like one of my biggest roadblocks, is to find a place for them to go. And hospitals will only keep them for so long. And then, you know, where do you put them, especially if they're homeless? A lot of them are. Or, you know, as parents, you know, we can't let them back in the home. So there's no place for them to go, because if we keep doing that, you know, family education's a whole nother story. But, you know, I learned that I had to do what I had to do for my own peace of mind and sanity. So it's just a challenge.
Yep.
Like, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, I don't know if we need to open up more state-funded places, or...
Well, instead of opening up new state facilities, which becomes an expense that is a multiple, because we have to then pay for pension, we have to pay for health benefits, we have to, you know, on top of the salary in the facilities. There's another $40 million in the plan that I just announced on Monday to incentivize folks to open up more beds. So $40 million is a good amount of money to get people incentivized, and we've gotten great reaction to it already. And because we recognize that there are two types of beds that are needed. It's not just treatment beds, but it's also detox beds, as you mentioned. And so we're also having the Department of Health look at making the application process easier to open up detox beds, because I've heard some complaints from folks in the community saying that it's hard to get the approvals you need to do that. So we've worked with the Commissioner of Health, and she's now making it easier and streamlining the process to be able to get those open in conjunction with the applications that people will make under the $40 million grant program. So I think that's going to be a good start to get more beds open and encourage it. Also,
in existing treatment centers.
Or in hospitals.
Okay.
Because hospitals are, you know, with that kind of money, hospitals be incentivized to use some of their beds for it too, because we'll reimburse at higher rates than they would normally have been reimbursed at. And if we can get the federal government, which I'm working hard to do, to waive the IMD requirements, that will open up a lot more beds around the state as well, because right now if you have a facility that's more than 17 beds, you cannot get federal reimbursement under Medicaid. So I've spoken to the president. I think I'm expecting any day for us to get the waiver in New Jersey. And once that happens, I think you'll see all the other states in the country start applying for the waiver. California's the only one who has it now, and I believe we'll have it next. And that will open up more beds too. So you're exactly right, Debbie. Part of it is capacity. And part of that problem was that there wasn't the funding there from the insurance companies. The last piece was we've now changed the rules for insurance companies that we regulate in New Jersey, which is about 30% of the insurance companies that work here. The other 70% are regulated by the federal government. And that's why we put in the report that I'm sharing for the president at the national level that the Department of Labor has to enforce the law that's already on the books, which says that for mental health and addiction, they have to reimburse at the same rates that they reimburse for any other physical problem. Yeah. That law is already on the books, and it's not being enforced by the Department of Labor. The last administration didn't enforce it, and this one's not doing it either. And we need them to enforce that law against the insurance companies, because that'll help people who do have insurance to be able to get reimbursed, and then those facilities will build more beds because they know they're going to get paid. So there's a couple of different ways to go at this, but the first way we're going at it is to take $40 million of state money and put it out there now to incentivize people to open more beds. So thank you for doing the recovery coach work. Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah,
as you know, it's important
really
stuff.
It's rewarding, like when you do that and when you're able to help someone, and then, you know, just see them grow. You know,
that's the best part of working as a coach.
It's the best part.
It is.
We have the program that we're doing. There's quite a few of us. We've trained a lot of people to be recovery coaches, and we're working with Kennedy and Spira, law enforcement, courts. We're working with everybody, and we see everybody. We go on every call. And we're all volunteers. We're not part of the WOR program.
Yep.
And it's tiresome, yeah, but is it rewarding? More than you could ever imagine.
Yep.
I mean, the hardest part about recovery, we brought pictures of our kids, so we knew who they were.
I remember. I remember from being in St. Angels before.
Yeah. But the hardest part of recovery, it's not going to detox, and it's not going to rehab. The hardest part is when they come home. You know, because eventually they always come home. Whether they go away for 12 months, 2 years, whatever, they come home. What happens then? The Resource Center is vital. I mean, every county has a prevention agency. But we need to have a recovery prevention agency. Because that is where we need to have that continuum to sustain the recovery. Because like sober living, definitely needed, great, yes. Okay, but They can't stay within those four walls. They got to come out of those walls.
Right.
Where do they integrate back
Recovery high
into the
schools,
community?
Right.
Recovery High School.
Sure, and that's, and you see us now, we're expanding, in this program, we're expanding the Recovery High School program, and expanding the program in Matawan, and we'll be expanding in other parts of the state as well for the Department of
That's cool.
Education.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's,
I looked at the other day.
yeah,
It'd be perfect.
yeah,
They need to
Recovery
go
Coach
to,
Training Academy and Recovery High School at the same time.
yeah,
that's
and
great.
we can
We
do
got to
it.
fill the need.
We have
and
the,
take
we have
care
the,
of
we've made the money available to do it, and we can do it. And I think, it's like we're taking the same approach to the colleges and universities. There's money in this program to incentivize them to open up more recovery dormitories. Rutgers does it very well right now, but they're really the only school that does it really well. So we're using the Rutgers model for all the other state colleges and universities and putting money in the program to incentivize them, because they go into recovery, then they go to college, which is probably, in its traditional way, the most anti-recovery place in the world. And so we need to make it easier for those young men and women who are working hard on their recovery to be in a place that they consider to be safe, and with people who understand the challenges that they're facing. And because a lot of these kids, not out of malice, but they just don't understand what these kids are going through. And so all of that stuff, Michelle, is really important. And the $40 million I talked about before requires of those places that they have to provide a continuum of care beyond the treatment moment, and that they will be incentivized for a lack of relapses, and they'll be penalized for repeated relapses.
Right.
So that I want to pay as much as I have to pay for programs that are successful, but I'm tired of paying for failure.
Right.
And you're talking about when they come home is the moment of maximum fear. Right? And so we need to make sure they're integrated into employment. We're going to make sure that they're integrated into housing if they don't have a home to go home to. Because if they're homeless, the ability for them to be able to stay sober is almost nil.
Right.
So whether it's sober housing or other types of supportive housing, all that's included in this program. Because what we've learned over the course of time of watching this is that if you miss some of those pieces, you increase the opportunity for relapse geometrically. And there's no use in spending all this money up front on inpatient treatment and even intensive outpatient treatment if then you're going to let them fall by the wayside after they get out of that or aren't going to that as frequently as they were before. So all that's important, really important.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, part of the funds was for sober living, as you mentioned. So we expend a lot of money every month on funding towards sober living. Our county is the only county in New Jersey that pays towards sober living, but their funds run out quickly. I mean, because it's a large amount of money.
Yeah.
So, we work with the county, and now it's really just us down in South Jersey that are paying for the funding. And I guess my question here is that, I was at a meeting, South Jersey Coalition last week, and everybody talked about they were going to change and the counties are going to start funding housing. I mean, is that something you've heard? Because we really need the other counties to do this, because you can only ask for so much money from families,
Yeah.
as a donation.
If they have one.
No,
They've been cut off.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about their parents, I'm just talking about, we're a nonprofit.
Yep.
So I have to beg for money in order to put somebody into sober living.
Yep.
And it's an everyday thing. I mean, we 15 times a week.
No doubt.
And it's just, we
And
need help.
Well, I think that the counties now are finally understanding that they have to be a part of this game in terms of helping. And yes, I am hearing that. And also, we've made it easier to build sober living homes as well. The state had regulations that were essentially geared towards rooming houses. Right? So there were sprinkler system requirements and other things that made it prohibitively expensive for anybody to build these things. To be sober living homes. So now listen, we're taking some risk, okay? So we're cutting back on some of that regulation because we don't think it's necessary to do, and we want to encourage the building of these. That, I think, has encouraged the counties to get in because it's now a little more affordable for them to put either capital money towards building some sober living homes and or grant money towards the operation of them. But I made the decision to cut back on those regulations because I talked repeatedly to people who wanted to get into doing this, but said that the cost of startup was prohibitive for them and that they couldn't because of all the state regulations. So we've cut back on that, and we've seen now a lot more interest in people who are actually doing it, and the counties, as a result, want to do it as well. The other thing I'd say about the counties is that, they're reacting to their constituents also. people are really upset and scared, and they want them to focus on this. And that's why the state, and what we're doing is trying to lead and set an example, and to find $200 million in the budget to do this in one fell swoop wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I wanted to make sure they saw that we did it. And if we're doing it, then they can find a few $1 million in each one of those counties to be able to help in the ways that there are gaps, or where they want to enhance programs based upon the need in their particular county. So hopefully we're seeing that. And what we're also seeing by putting this money in is the private sector folks are incentivized to expand as well. And we made some of the rules a little bit easier to increase the reimbursement they can get from the state, not just up to 17 years, 364 days, but now up to 20 years old. Because what was happening was we would have a lot of empty young adult beds because we weren't reimbursing after 18. And the idea that somehow these kids are not kids anymore because they turned 18 and they don't need the help is, anybody who's a parent knows that that's purely arbitrary. My 17-year-old just got his license. I can't even imagine, as he pulls out of the driveway, what may happen. And the idea that they don't still need our help and our support as a government because all of a sudden they turned 18, artificial. So we've eliminated that.
If they've been using since they were 13 years old, like mentally, they are 13 years old.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole lot more that can go over and beyond just 18,
Absolutely.
We can keep our children on our insurance until they're 26,
Yep.
right? But there's so many families out there that
Sure.
don't have any of that.
And just to give you some scope of cost, to move that number from 18 to 20 cost the state $75 million, just to move it from 18 to 20. It tells you about the cost, it tells you about the level of need, because it's being utilized. So, when I went and told them I want to move it from 18 to 20, they were like, okay, we'll go get our calculators and do the math for you, Governor, and let you know how much more it's going to cost me. But this stuff, but it also shows you what kind of need it is. It really does.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
something? I think it's fantastic that it was moved from 18 to 20. A lot of the things that we're doing in Gloucester County with Michelle, with the Opioid Initiative, going into schools. Now, high school's great, a little too late. Middle school, very good. I know lead program and everything, the other day you had talked about, what programs might work, might not work. We're finding so many kids, the uptake in kids that are going to their SAC counselors after the Opioid Initiative visits. Michelle has the numbers,
Yeah.
she could tell you, but it's got to be started earlier, because you're not going to be able to keep moving that number from 18 to 20 to 23 to 25,
Right.
because if we can get them younger, maybe we wouldn't have to keep moving.
Money is always
that
the
number
issue.
up.
It's always money, because things
Right.
cost money, and we know that,
Well,
right?
you'll see, Michelle, that we'll make an announcement next week out of the Department of Education, because we haven't talked about the prevention piece yet this week. So next week we will. And next week we'll be talking about that, and you'll hear from me and the Commissioner of Education that we're moving this into the elementary schools. The fact is, what we found now, with a lot of intense study of this over the last 2 years, is that if we wait till the kids get to middle school, it's too late.
Right.
And it is frightening to have to walk into a 3rd or 4th grade class
Yeah.
and have some of these conversations. But what I tell people is that the only thing more frightening is not,
Exactly.
because this stuff is happening, and we've got to start to deal with it at the elementary school level. They need to understand in a way that only we can do in the schools to reinforce the messages the parents are trying to give, and sometimes to work against some things that are happening in the home as well for some of these kids. We need to be sending that message. So you'll hear from me and the Commissioner of Education next week about the programs that we're going to put into and mandate that the public schools do, which is really important. And we haven't spoken about prevention yet this week, because we've really focused on treatment this week, but we'll be talking more about prevention next week.
And if we talk about prevention, maybe we could talk about the community alliances, which we are, the Community Alliance, Shore Community Alliance, and the Wall Community Alliance. We are the ones that go in the schools and do that kind of education. We do puppet-based curriculums and that kind of stuff to talk to the kids about prevention. And
You set me up, Kristen. That's great, because one of the arguments I had when we were putting this program together was they wanted just to give the money to the boards of education so that they could fund the programs. And I said no, because what will happen is the money will go into the Board of Education, it'll be used on something else,
Right.
and it won't happen. So what we intend to announce, now I'm announcing it now rather than next week, but what the heck? The fact is that we're going to hire like alliances and nonprofits to go into the school, work with them, and have them go in.
Heck yeah. Oh, my God.
Give them one for me, too.
So there's no, to me, there was no reason for us to have the schools reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You all are doing this already, and if I give you the money, I know you're going to use it on education and prevention.
Right.
If I give it to boards of education, they have, and this is not to be negative towards them, they have lots of other pressures on them of monies that the public wants them to spend. And, you know, I understand, having run this government now for 8 years, money is fungible. And once it gets in government's hands, it can be moved around for a whole bunch of different reasons in different ways. By the way, I'm doing it to do this. You know, this wasn't budgeted for in the budget, and yet I'm moving it around $200 million from other things because I think this is a more important priority. So if I do it, I'm sure they'll try to do it. So if I fund all of you through a grant program from the Department of Education, we're much better off in terms of making sure that people who are trained and people who are committed to this program will then be the ones that go in the schools and help to do that.
So will that open the doors for community alliances to be able to get into schools easier?
Yes.
Okay, because that's where the struggle is.
Yep.
Sometimes they,
I'll talk to you later.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and what you're going to find is the
I
commissioner...
mean, we get in, but it's hard.
The Commissioner of Education is going to order them to any of the people that we give grants to, the way we're going to do it is, if you're a grantee of the state, then that's going to give you the license to go in.
That's wonderful.
Can I say something
Yeah.
real quick? As for getting into the schools and you know, giving grants and things like that, I think it's fantastic. What we did in Monroe Township with Michelle, one of the schools, we go around to schools and we do the hidden in plain sight. And the growth in that has been unbelievable. How many schools want it in there? It was Buna, wasn't it? That made it mandatory before
Yes.
prom. That parents have to go and sit through this so that they know what to look for.
Sure.
I was
Exactly.
blindsided.
Yes.
And the parents didn't mind.
The parents actually said this, they've
If
been
it's
to many
mandatory.
meetings, and that this was by far the best that they've been to. And it was mandatory.
It has
Some
to be
people were
mandatory.
fighting,
Yeah.
but you know what? You want them to go to prom. You've spent all this money on tickets, on dresses, on hair. Why not take a couple hours and make it so that you can see what's going on,
Yeah.
and you won't find your daughter, I'm sorry, I may need
okay.
tissues. You won't find your daughter overdosed on their bedroom,
Yeah.
on their bed.
Yep.
It's better to have that education ahead of time and not need it than to wind up not knowing where to go.
Yep.
So I think the more education we get into the schools, the better. And the earlier on, the better.
We start
And-
raising our kids
Yeah.
as soon as they're born, so that's
Right.
when you need to
Well,
start.
it's absolutely
Parents
right.
that need that education.
I was at the Center for Great Expectations yesterday in Somerset County, which is a facility for both the treatment and the housing of pregnant addicts. And one of the things that we talked so much about yesterday is that this starts from, you know, in the womb, and how you're treating your child when you're carrying him or her.
Yeah.
And then once they're born, what kind of atmosphere are they in, and that we really lay out the blueprint for our kids' lives by the way they're treated and what they see at home. So, and I also think, Charlene, for parents to hear from folks like you is the most powerful testimonial they can hear. Because
That's
you,
what the kids like the most. When
Yeah.
we do the workshops in the schools,
sure,
they are more in tune with the personal stories
Yeah.
and
That-
moved.
that-
And then before you know it, they're
sure.
doing a peer.
It makes it real. It's
We
not-
step back.
Yep, it's not a theory anymore. It's
I'm
it's
sorry.
real. Go ahead.
Last year, no, 2 years ago, I'm sorry, it might have been early last year, my daughter Monica and I, who are now also City of Angel recovery coaches, we went into the middle school in Williamstown. And at that point, my daughter was still in a wheelchair, couldn't walk. She gave her story, I gave mine, and later that day, we were at Walmart. It was probably 8 o'clock at night, and my daughter said, "Did you see that?" I said, "What?" She said, "The little girl over there is talking to her mom and pointing at me in the wheelchair." And I said, "Well, just don't worry about it. It's fine." we were in another aisle, and the mother comes over and taps me on the shoulder. Here we go. Sorry. Taps me on the shoulder and said, "I wanted to thank you." She said, "My daughter pointed you out and said that you were speaking at her school today." She said, "I have to fight with my kids to come and sit at the table and eat dinner." She said, "Tonight we sat and talked for 2 hours about what she heard at the school." So she said, "I'm thanking you as a mom for just opening the communication." So
important. And, Charlene, it becomes real because you look just like every other mom, right? And your daughter could have been any of those children who were sitting in that classroom, and she was one of those children, right? She was one of those children, right? So that's why I think it's so important for us to, and why I'm traveling the state to do this. The more conversation we have, and the more that gets reported on and people read it, the greater opportunity we're going to have for people to be willing to step forward themselves. Because in the end, we don't want people just to step forward when they step forward to go to the funeral.
exactly.
I mean, and we don't want people just to comfort each other at that moment. We want people to be there to be supportive of each other before that ever happens, and to try to prevent it. And I think one of the great things about what City of Angels is doing is to empower parents to feel like they don't have to be a victim about this, that there's things that they can do to help to prevent the next tragedy from happening.
That's the culture that we need to create. I know Governor Christie has to get ready to go, but it's in our youth and our children. My daughter is 14 now, and she goes through our Thursday night weekly meeting. I mean, she loves it because that meeting, it's leave your yayas out the door, it's non-judgment, open mind. We support any pathway to recovery. And we go around, and she says, "My name is Brooklyn, and I'm a young advocate." And she said, "Mom, I want to do Municipal Alliance in school." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have one." And I said, "Well, you just gave me an idea." So I have to go to Board of Ed tonight and do a presentation on our outcomes, and I'm going to present to them.
Call me about that.
If our Municipal Alliance will provide $2,500 towards a Junior Alliance,
Yes.
everything has to be approved through the Township Alliance. You guys do, advertising, and so they're going to start running the school,
That's
and
great.
I'm pretty sure they're going to say because
They're
it's
very
their peers.
successful. They work out.
They want to hear from their peers.
And what you'll see, and I'll end with this. You're going to see starting this week again that we've started with our ad campaign again, both on radio and on television. And I actually had the disturbing moment of hearing myself on the radio as I was pulling into this meeting. It's the first time I've heard the current round of TV and radio commercials. I haven't seen the TV yet, but I heard the radio. And the message in this round is see the signs.
Yeah.
And we talk in there, and Vanessa Vitolo, who was on the first round of TV commercials with me, is back again as a recovering addict to talk about the signs. And say to parents, if you see these signs, if you see it in your wife or husband, if you see it in your brother or sister, not just your children, that you need to reach out for help. And so, we're doing this because each little step we take, we don't know which life we're going to save. But if we save some, imagine the pain and the agony that we lift off of people who don't have to go through that. And I have 4 children. I can't imagine what folks are going through. Can't. And so, to me, this is my mission, not just as a governor, but as a father. And so, we hope to get this message out there so that people stop being ashamed, stop hiding, and get out in the open. And
There's more of us than there is of them.
well, there's no doubt. And listen, those numbers are getting bigger and bigger every day, unfortunately. And the fact is that the potential out there is endless.
The other
It's
day,
endless.
when you were in Newark, you had mentioned about 9/11.
Yep.
Like 3,000 people. And at night, I was just thinking about what you had said. And I'm like, but it wasn't just 3,000 people, because each one of those individuals has a family.
Yeah.
So tack on another 6,000 to 9,000 on top of the 3 every 3 weeks.
Sure. For all these years that I've gone to the 9/11 ceremony at Ground Zero in New York, and I've been going since I was U.S. Attorney in 2003. The thing that always strikes you about that day, to me, there's always 2 things. One, there's the names being read, But then it's all the people that are still there, who are the mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, sons and daughters, some of whom were in utero when their father was killed at 9/11.
I'm the aunt of one.
Right, and so what you understand is that this has a much broader effect across everyone. And so what we're going to try to do is continue to raise the consciousness level while we raise the funding, because if you do one without the other, you're really a hypocrite, right? So I got to put the money where the mouth is, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And I really do believe, based upon my work on the national level, that we're going to see the President and Congress step forward to treat this like the national emergency that it is, and to step forward with the kind of funding that we need. When hurricanes come in, as we're well familiar, you need emergency funding. This is a hurricane. This is a hurricane that's happening every day, and we need to do it differently. So I can't thank you all enough. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the folks who are here, and I want you to know that this is something that I've been working on for 20 years. And now I'm finally, for the last 8 years, in a position where I can really do something about it. I've got 117 days left, and every day of those 117 days, I'm going to spend on trying to make sure we do everything we can on this problem. The mayor and everybody at every level of government knows people who have been affected by this, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, Mayor. It's really important.
Thanks for coming to Manasquan.
I'm happy to be here, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
See you.
I want to give
Thank you, Dave. That's why I wanted to do pictures really quick.
I'm just gonna grab these. They're the survivors.
Yep. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Governor, when are we going to get
Thank
more
you.
information about where the funding is coming from?
Yes.
Yeah.